think Tevez going to Juventus, what a coup that was for me. I mean,
on a head-to-head battle, Atletico Madrid can do more damage to Barcelona than the other way around.
Either he's really blind or he's fixing the match. I can't see it any other way.
I'm trying to get Sir Bob on my side here by saying City will win the Premier League.
it is an upset. You would expect Man United to go and win there.
Over $1 billion was paid in transfer fees between the clubs in Europe.
It's football. It's damn football. Like Ferguson said, football. Bloody marvellous.
Yeah, well, the celebration was, I can't believe I just scored against Mexico. At one point, Parma, I think it's only like 224 players under contract. Hey, they're going to throw me out of here, fellas. You're going to get me arrested on your show.
If you're a serious talent, you're going back and you're playing for Santos. You know, you're going back to play for, like in Argentina, for River Plate or Boca Juniors, or you're going to Europe.
He looked like the Ryan Giggs of old. He was more creative than any player on the pitch. He made Mata look stupid. He made Rooney look silly.
Now, the Premier League is the most exciting league out there. I think it's probably the best marketed league without a question.
When you look at the draw for the Champions League, you kind of say, well, all the pieces kind of fell into place for everybody except City.
I am your host, Joe Usello. Sir Bob, Mike Orr. My co-host, Rob Rojas. My trusted co-host, Ben the Machine.
Ground control to Major Tom. Ground control to Major Tom. Take your protein pills and put your helmet on. 10. Ground control 9, to Major Tom. 8.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 104 of Low Limit Football. I am your host, Joe Usello, and back after a great week of football, an innovative week for us here at the helm at Low Limit Football. We've got some exciting things coming up for you, and just happy to be back and to talk to everyone tonight. The last 20 seconds there of the intro was for the now late, great David Bowie, an innovator, a musical legend, a rock and roll superstar. Certainly hit home. He lost his battle with cancer last night at the age of 69, and just amazing, you know, to reflect back on David Bowie's career and life. But obviously with Lemmy and with Freddie Mercury and anybody else that was an innovator in the rock and roll era, that he is there and jamming with them now. So glad everyone is aboard here tonight. Glad to see a bunch of people in the chat room this evening. Luca's back in the house. Zach, and I'm gonna mess it up. Looks like it's Nies Edmund is also in the chat. Glad you guys are here tonight. Thanks for stopping by, and hopefully we're gonna bring a great show to you tonight. We got two great guests coming up. One coming up in about 5 minutes. The great Kristan Heneage is coming on to join us, and then a little later on, Rob earlier today interviewed beIN Sports' Andres Cordero, and we've got a great interview coming up with him as well. He's been a busy man covering La Liga and Serie A this weekend, doing the dynamic duo work with Matteo Bonetti on beIN Sports, so it's going to be fantastic to hear from him as well. Rob, I'm going to send it over to you. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, and I'm great to be back on Low Limit Football for the first time in 2016.
That's right. Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, guys.
Yeah. So how did the interview with Dre go today?
Oh, it was fantastic. I think you guys are going to like it, and it's going to be interesting to hear his opinions over everything happening around the world.
Awesome. And then, of course, to the great white north, like I always say, is Mike Orr. Mike, what's going on, Captain?
Hey, Joe, how you doing? A little sad, David Bowie passing, but looking forward to a good show.
Yep, absolutely. We're gonna do our best and get through that as well. You know, and for those that don't know, a coworker lost her husband this week, and that's why the show was late. 42 years old, and you know, it just goes to show you, between David Bowie, you lose a friend. You know, we never know when our number's up, so we might as well enjoy it all while we're here. So, but not to be a downer, we enjoy football. We're going to talk about it tonight. We're going to have a great time, guys. So let's kick off the show. I know we're going to be a little rushed here. Mike, I would imagine you have a trivia question for us tonight, don't you?
I do. Just hold on one second. I almost forgot about it. Okay.
All right.
When Sol Campbell left Tottenham to join Arsenal, obviously became a hated player.
Mm-hmm.
Can you name the 3 other players who have played for both Arsenal and Tottenham?
Ooh.
Why do you always get me with these bad ones?
I can get one. I know one.
Left Arsenal to play for Tottenham, or it doesn't matter either
Vice
way?
versa. He left one devil to play for the other devil,
It's
as far as the fans of either team would be
So
concerned.
play for both. So play for
Two-way
both.
street.
But played for both, yeah. Only 4 have done it. Sol Campbell was, probably the biggest move and the most loud move, and booed every time he entered the pitch. So
Rob,
by both fans eventually.
Rob, I'm going to be leaning on you on this one. Mike, boy, you brought the big guns tonight, didn't you?
I thought that was actually a good, fair one.
And it's a good one. It's a very good one. This is one that I think Liam, if he was in the chat tonight, might have gotten a little stumped on.
Yeah, you never know. Liam might get it not even being in the chat, so
Yeah, that's true.
we'll see.
He's pretty good.
But do message the answers to me. Don't put them in chat, please,
No, yeah, that's right.
if you can remember.
For those in the chat room, that's right. Send if you have an answer to the trivia question, you can send it to Sir Bob Orr on Twitter at Sir Bob at Sir Bob Orr, right? Right, Mike?
That's right. Yeah.
Yep. So send it to him, and he'll actually come on the mic and say, so and so got it right, so and so got it right, and then Rob and Joe got it wrong. But so let's
Or at least Joe.
Yeah, or at least Joe. That's for
At the
sure.
very least, yeah.
Yeah, and Zach is asking if it matters in what order they were with the clubs. It does not matter. Just you got 4 names. Well, you got 3 names. Sol Campbell's the gimme, and you got 3 more, and it's all yours. And the prize is our eternal gratitude, I guess, for lack of a better term. So let's move on, because I know we got Chris coming on in a couple minutes. Let's cover some housekeeping today, which was a foregone conclusion. Lionel Messi won the Ballon d'Or title earlier this afternoon, and the opening thoughts are related to the Ballon d'Or. Is this the last time we'll see Messi and Ronaldo on the same top 3 podium in the Ballon d'Or? Is this the last time you're going to see that dynamic duo grace the steps of the stage for the Ballon d'Or finalists? Over the past about 5 or 6 years, actually probably even longer than that, 4 years. I thought it was even longer. We've seen Ronaldo, Messi, and player X. We've seen Andres Iniesta. We've seen Manuel Neuer. We saw Neymar today. We've seen Frank Ribéry. So it's been Ronaldo, Messi, and X. And is this the time? Is this the last time we're going to see Ronaldo, Messi, and X? Are we going to see Ronaldo, X, and X? Are we going to see Messi, X, and X? Or even just 3 new players? Rob, I'm going to throw that one at you first. What are your thoughts on if we've seen the last of the Messi-Ronaldo duo?
Well, I mean, it all depends in the end about their remaining future. Obviously, Messi is definitely going to stay at the club for as long as we know it. Mm-hmm. And Ronaldo, who knows what his future will be outside of Real Madrid. But I think at the moment, for me, I think it's looking for a Messi X and X more likely than a Ronaldo X and X or just 3 new players in general.
Okay. Mike, how about you? Do you think it's going to be Messi X and X more likely than Ronaldo?
Well, I think it's already Messi, Neymar, Ronaldo this year for me.
Mm-hmm.
And the most likely, obviously, to drop off is going to be Ronaldo for me. Messi's probably going to win it a couple more times yet. I believe Neymar's going to stay there. And I think someone like Paul Pogba or Kevin De Bruyne, someone like that becomes the new X.
Okay.
Definitely someone of youth.
Yes, yeah, and obviously Neymar's 23. You mentioned Paul Pogba, who is, I believe, 22. And Kevin De Bruyne is also, I believe, 24, if I remember correctly. So
yep.
Yeah, we've got some youth there. Luca's asking in the chat if Mike, the question is in the EPL era, or is it just?
I thought I wrote yes, didn't I?
Yes. I don't know. Okay, so yes, it is in the EPL era. So I want to clarify that for the trivia. For me, I don't think we've actually seen the end of it yet. I think we may see another year or 2 at the most of it. But I'm wondering if it is going to be Ronaldo that falls off as opposed to Messi. And the only reason I bring that up is because and it's based on really durability and schedule. You don't see Cristiano Ronaldo missing very many games due to injury. We've seen it over the past couple of years where Messi has missed a few games here, a few games there, and the length of the Argentinian season, let's say, and the European season is going to go this long this year as well. It's just a lot of wear and tear on these guys. And
what do you mean by the Argentinian season?
Well,
Because he plays in Spain.
Well, but you've got to remember, in the summer he goes back and plays in Argentina. He played in the Copa America last year.
Oh, so you mean for the national?
So I mean
for
for
the
his
national
national
team. Yeah,
team.
so just his personal schedule in terms of football matches is ridiculously long. And we're also looking at two teams that you could very well see. We saw this last year where Messi played in the Champions League final, and I think like 3 days later had to be in Chile for the Copa America, if you guys remember correctly. So we're seeing a situation, and I haven't checked the dates on the Euro versus the end of the Champions League, but you could see a 2 or 3 week turnaround time there again. It's not a lot of time for these guys after playing.
But he's not in the Euro.
No, but he's going to be in the Copa America.
Maybe.
Right, but maybe. And you got
actually,
Ronaldo, who's not in the Euro either this year, right?
No, he is.
Yeah, he is. He
Portugal-
will.
Oh, yeah, so there you go. So, I don't know. I think Ronaldo's the most likely to drop. Actually, I think he's already dropped off for me.
I think he's dropped
I
off
would
a
have
little
replaced
bit.
him this year.
But the one thing I think he's dropped off a little bit, but the one thing that he has over those other guys is the durability factor. I don't remember Cristiano Ronaldo being injured, or at least anything missing significant amount of time. So he's.
But could you argue if it would have been Messi, Neymar, and Suarez this year? I would think that's more for me. That would have been the better three.
I think if I remember correctly, last year Ronaldo actually scored more goals than Messi in all competitions. So I probably would have had a little bit of a problem with it going to Suarez instead of Cristiano Ronaldo this year. But there is an argument to be made for that, for sure. So I'm not poo-pooing it. I'm just saying that
But you're not dropping Messi for Suarez, but you would think that maybe Ronaldo for Suarez. You're not saying that, but maybe if you were to do it.
If anything, I think there's more of a debate of maybe switching Neymar to Suarez or vice versa.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, you could go Neymar. You could go Suarez instead of Neymar too. You could certainly do that. It's tough to say, but I think like I say if we see one of those two fall off the pedestal, I think you might be in the very near future, next year. In the very near future, you might see Messi fall off as opposed to Cristiano because of the durability factor. But in the long term, yes, absolutely. I think you'll see Messi on that pedestal for another 3-4-ish years, and then he will probably be the one be falling off that pedestal as well. And I think that fall will be a little bit quicker for Cristiano Ronaldo. You also have to look at, Mike, you brought up Kevin De Bruyne, you brought up Paul Pogba. I'm hoping, Rob, you got to ask my question about Paulo Dybala with Andres Cordero. We're seeing a lot of great names that are starting to come up. Now, they're not at the level of Ronaldo and Messi in their heydays. At least not yet. But I think we're gonna see those players get there. And to be honest with you guys, kind of looking forward to it. For the past 4 or 5 years, this award to me has been, it is what it is. It's kind of bleh because it's Messi, Ronaldo, and player X.
And this has always been like this for the last 8 years.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the day when we don't know who those three players are. Because we have 7, we have 8, we have 9 guys who are capable and who are deserving to be on that pedestal. And
if it was a real competition, we would probably have that, but it's not a real competition.
But I think at that point, you and I are going to have long radio shows because we're going to have a lot of debate going on for it. So,
which is what takes away from the award is that there's a lack of debate.
Yeah, there is.
Just because there's no need for it, just given the 3 players that are there all the time.
The debate has consistently been third place, and really, who cares?
Right.
Who cares about third place? And like we said, I think these guys have won the last 8 or 9 Ballon d'Ors between them. I'm sorry.
5 and 3 and 5 and 4 or something. Now.
Right, but at the same time, I think Iniesta is the only one that's ruined that party. But at the same time, these guys, they've been consistently there, and it's almost like, well, let's see somebody else. So, gentlemen, I'm going to cut you off because I do want to throw this question at our next guest, who is joining us now, returning to us from Low Limit. I'm sorry, returning to us. Boy, oh boy, I am lost today. Sorry, guys. Returning to us from Yahoo Sports UK 442 and CNN is Chris Heneage. Chris, how are you tonight?
I'm not too bad, thanks. How are you?
Good. Thanks for sticking with me through that long fumbled introduction, but it's been a long day, and I'm just trying to get my feet back under me. We're discussing the Ballon D'Or, and it's really been over the past 7 or 8 years the Messi and Ronaldo show. And we're talking about, is this the last time we're going to see Messi and Ronaldo together on that podium before we see maybe Messi and 2 players or Ronaldo and 2 players and the other one is left behind and not at the altar. Do you see that happening sooner than later? And obviously Neymar looks like he's going to be an heir apparent, but give me a couple of names that would be part of that trio at the Ballon d'Or ceremony next year.
I think Luis Suarez. I think if he had a more personable and positive image, I think he would have been there today. I personally think he's been just as influential for Barcelona as Neymar and Messi. So in some ways you have to remember that this is a little bit of a popularity contest, and sometimes it can even descend into voting for your mates. I think Stefan Mbia voted for Yaya Toure to win the award. So there's a lot of kind of subjective readings into this. It's not necessarily everyone voting for who we maybe agree as a consensus is the best player, but I think Suarez is certainly in there. I look at someone like, let's say, Paul Pogba. I think he could move into that if he continues to develop the way he is. There are a number of players, I think, that have the potential to do it. The idea that Messi and Ronaldo drop out of that 3, I think it's hard to see. I think, personally, you've got a few years left with both men just because of how well they're performing.
Right. Now, we brought up Paul Pogba's name. One name that I am looking at, because a lot has been made about the quality of his play in recent weeks, and that is Paulo Dybala at Juventus. I forget, I think it was actually Paul Pogba who had said that this guy has the talent to be the Ballon d'Or winner coming very soon. I'd like your thoughts on the idea that maybe Paulo Dybala is the next great Argentinian footballer.
Well, funnily enough, when you asked me the first question there, Dybala's name kind of circled in my head, but I felt it was perhaps a little bit too early because, again, he's only just arrived at Juventus at this big club, and he's still, I think, getting acclimatised to that, which is not to say that he's been poor. I think he's been sensational. In fact, I think he matched Tevez very early on in terms of their production and goal return and what have you in his first 10 games. So there's clearly quality there. Zamparini, again, a man that I think really does kind of divide opinion, can sometimes be seen as a bit of a clown and someone that will say something so that he gets to see himself on the front page of La Gazzetta or something like that. He himself said he's the heir to Messi and even Aguero, and I'm inclined to agree with that. I think he's a sensational talent. There's a little bit more of a raw edge to him, though, when I watch him play. He's a little bit more explosive in the sense that not everything feels as controlled as, let's say, Messi. But again, in saying that, that's an exceptionally high standard to hold him to. I think he certainly has an unpredictability, and he has that almost X factor, that ability to change a game. And whenever you have that, I think you're more than likely to be at the top of your profession, particularly soccer.
Sure. Now, the last question I would ask you as a Juventus fan, we've had David Amoyal here in the past, and he's thought that Juve would not sell Paul Pogba in this transfer window, but it's going to be next to impossible to hold on to him in the summer. If Juventus doesn't sell Paul Pogba coming up in the summer transfer window, could we see a duo of Pogba and Dybala that would last, years to the point where it would rival the Messi-Neymar duo?
I think it becomes very difficult, as you alluded in the question there with David's assessment, who, again, I think is closer to the eye of the storm than myself. For Juventus and Italian football in general, it's harder to hold on to those bigger names, those bigger stars. I think it has become something of a selling league in recent seasons, in my opinion at least. And Pogba fits into that perfectly. You look at the period when he arrived, Juventus were trying to be smart with the market. They were essentially exploiting deals at both ends of the age spectrum. They were bringing someone like Andrea Pirlo in on a free transfer because it represents a good financial sense. They were also doing the same with Pogba because that was a player that could develop. I seem to remember his agent saying that the likes of Roma and perhaps even Genoa, I think, had the chance to sign him but didn't want to or couldn't come to an agreement for the wages that he wanted, and that Juventus showed the faith, and that in turn earned them a loyalty with Pogba himself. I also think Juventus will come to the point where they realise that it's in their best interest to sell him, because some of the fees touted are absolutely sensational. If he goes for a similar price range to, let's say, Kevin De Bruyne, maybe even Raheem Sterling. The things you could do with that level of finance are really unparalleled. You can essentially build an entire new team. It's not guaranteed for success. I mean, look at Tottenham and what happened in the wake of Gareth Bale's departure to Real Madrid. It is an opportunity to find greater success, though, and more long-term success. And I think any chance that you have to do that, you have to really try and take it.
And I think Juventus's front office has been very smart over the years. So if anybody had, 60, 70, 80 million euro in their pocket to spend, you would think that Juventus is one of those teams that would be able to spend that money smartly and really improve the side.
Definitely. I've been impressed on the whole with Juventus' business of late. We even just mentioned Dybala there. There's another good example. It was a big investment, but it's worked. Maybe if you look at Mandzukic and put it alongside and say that one maybe hasn't been as successful as they would have hoped. I think they've had a good record in recent years, though. They've been able to identify what they wanted from the market and the correct players to do that, and often players that will increase in value. I think even the signings like Juan Cuadrado, that to me is another shrewd piece of business where you exploited a player that was on the fringes of his club, and whether they can agree a permanent transfer remains to be seen. Sure. Either way, his stock will have improved and they'll have gained something from it, even just on a playing end for this season. So yeah, I think you're right in saying that. Juventus have been incredibly shrewd in the market and they deserve credit for that.
Sure. I'm going to send you over to Mike Orr now. I know Mike has a bunch of questions. Mike, take it away.
Hey, Kristan, how you doing? Happy New Year, mate.
And you, buddy, how's things?
Good, thanks. I guess the first question I want to ask you is one that I asked you on Twitter that I might have missed your answer to. Are Vertonghen and Aderwald the best two center backs in the league at the moment?
I think it's difficult. Well, I think it's difficult to look past them. That's what I would say. Certainly, I know that Tottenham have tried to break into that top four consistently, and for the first time, I think they can do it. Partly because they have that centre back pairing. You have two players there who won the Dutch league at Ajax. In Vertonghen, you had a captain. You've got players with experience and pedigree who are still in their prime. Often, I think in years gone by when Tottenham have tried to bring in that kind of centre-back, they've come maybe at the end of their career. Someone like Nordin Nebet springs to mind many years ago. I think you're struggling to look past them too also because there's not a real wealth of strong centre-back partnerships. You could maybe look across the way in North London and say that Koscielny and Mertesacker have their moments where they certainly look good. Personally, I think a lot of that is because Koscielny is a very good defender, not because the partnership works. It's a lot of investment in players that have played together, not just at club level, but international level too, and I think they've benefited from bringing in two players that know each other impeccably, and as a consequence of that, know each other's strengths and weaknesses, and can work around each other. Often that takes time for a centre-back pairing to learn, whereas they've almost come into the football club, albeit at different times, and known exactly what to expect from the other one from minute one. And I think when you can go into a game knowing that your centre-back partner has this strength, for example, or this deficiency, then it makes it much easier for you two to work in tandem.
Okay, and now I wanted to ask you about something a little closer to home. John Joe Shelby to Newcastle, is this a deal that you think is going to happen, and is it good for Newcastle if it does happen?
I fully expect it to happen. The breaking point with them was largely the salary that John Joe Shelby was claiming or seeking. It was a little bit higher than what Newcastle wanted to pay. I think it would have put him as the highest paid player at the club, which, if he achieves his potential, certainly he could be the highest paid player. Right now, he hasn't done enough to command that, I think. And they've been able to come back around the table and agree something which I think is good for both parties. In terms of his benefit to the football club, I think they have someone who can play the piano, to borrow a phrase. There's an idiom I once heard Tim Vickery use about piano carriers and piano players. And too often this season, Newcastle have had a lot of piano carriers in the centre of midfield, but not many piano players. And it means that it's harder for them to create chances, it's harder for them to kind of orchestrate things. And when they dominate possession in the way they have in the last few weeks, it comes unstuck when you can't find a very dynamic pass or a pass to really cut through the lines. And that's been a problem for Newcastle, I think. John Joe Shelby does address that. He also comes with the caveat that I think from a mental standpoint, there's a fragility there, there's a bit of a weakness. There's also a tendency to flip-flop, for want of a better word, someone that can supremely believe he is an elite player and will play for England, and there are other times where you get the feeling that he's not that sold on his own ability, and he has these moments where he's unsure and the pressure gets to him, and that would be a concern for me because St James's Park, Newcastle in general, it's a tough place to play. That's nothing to do with it being a self-believed big club or anything like that. It's just a tough place because Mike Ashley has eroded a lot of the relationship there. So it's one that I think comes with benefits, of course, but as with most signings, it also comes with some potential pitfalls that they'll have to navigate.
And does he address a need that Newcastle might have in terms of set pieces and corners, takers?
I think he does to a degree. I mean, Jack Colback has been taking a number of them recently, or Tovan when he manages to find his way on the pitch. I think he will look to own a lot of those situations, those corners, those free kicks that you talk about. And again, I think that's important. That they're trying to sign this January window, not just difference makers, but winners or those with a strong mentality. Because if you look at the last few months, their character has consistently been questioned in the press, even kind of by people during games and then commentators and what have you. And I can see why they do that, because there are times they certainly look weak and they certainly look like a team that flip-flops mentally, at least. And I think that Shelvey, again, if he embraces St James's Park in the right way, I think he could do a very good job.
Okay. Switching over to the FA Cup now, we've just about finished the third round, except for the replays. But I'm wondering if you think that it should be moved, the date of the third round, to somewhere before the Christmas break in order to give the tournament the importance that it deserves and allow the teams to field their best lineups.
I think that's a good point. What I would say is that English football is very much about tradition, whether it's match of the day or the FA Cup final being hosted at Wembley. There's a big element of sentiment with English football fans, and when I look back, the FA Cup third round has always been a January thing. It's always been something to look forward to in the new year. I think if you start to change that and mess with that, you could certainly incur the wrath of some fans, because again, it's stabilised in that point in the history and in the context of the calendar. But I also see why it would be wanted, why some would want it to move it to where you're suggesting. The issue I have with that is you've then got the Christmas games as well, so you then have to debate whether you want to move them, whether you want to give the winter break, which again opens up another can full of worms, and it's a very convoluted issue, and I think at present I can see arguments for both sides of it.
Okay, I guess switching quickly over to Arsenal now, they appear to have navigated their way through the Christmas period in decent shape. They're playing Liverpool on Wednesday. How important is this game for both sides?
I think it's important for different reasons. I think if you look at Arsenal, it's important for their title credentials, in the sense that this is one of, if not the best chance they've had in a number of years now to pick up a Premier League title, because the others around them are floundering. For Liverpool, it's important because it's that restoration of pride, the fact that they couldn't surpass Exeter in the FA Cup, the fact that there have been sizable peaks and sizable troughs for Jurgen Klopp as he tries to stamp his authority on things. This is another one of those moments where he can win some of that favour, which is not to say he's under pressure, more that he's trying to establish some good favour almost. He's trying to establish the idea that the club is moving forward in the right direction, and if you can essentially beat out what would be a future title rival in years to come, then I think you go some way to achieving that belief and reinforcing the idea that you can challenge for the Premier League title in the future.
Do you have a prediction for the game?
I'm inclined to say Arsenal will win it. I think the difficulty with Liverpool is, I think if it's away, it's a different prospect, because again, they have space to exploit, which I think their attackers thrive with. When it's at Anfield, you would expect them to dictate things, and I think when they're expected to dictate things is when they struggle most, because they simply haven't got the players required to do that. So I would expect an Arsenal win, personally.
Let's just say Liverpool did win. Do they still have a chance for fourth place?
I think they do, purely because the Premier League this season has largely been unpredictable. in the sense that we now see Leicester vying for a fourth place spot. If history continues the way it is, they will finish fourth, because no team in their position has finished lower than fourth with the points total that they have. For that reason alone, I think it's certainly attainable. It's about building momentum for Liverpool, though. That's the difficulty they have, is that every time they seem as if they're turning that corner, they get pushed back around a few steps and then have to rebuild a little bit. And I think in many ways it's still a fact-finding mission for Jurgen Klopp. He's still trying to learn things about his players. I mean, you look at the fact that he brought back the young goalkeeper Ward this week. I think that is him very subtly suggesting that there isn't a future for Adam Bogdan, because he's given him opportunities and he hasn't succeeded. There will be similar tests for the rest of the squad that will have to pass during this season. So in many ways, this is almost an extended pre-season for him to really find out what he wants to do with the players at his disposal, who he needs to buy, who he needs to try and source, and what positions need filling.
But certainly it's much easier to get some of these signings if they are in a Champions League position, right?
Undeniably. I think you look at years gone by, they tried to get Alexis Sanchez, a man that ended up at Arsenal. He wasn't that interested, largely because it was reported they weren't in the Champions League. Memphis Depay, again, had similar discussions, didn't come to fruition. I would imagine for a similar reason, because he wanted to challenge himself at an elite club in the Champions League. It makes a world of difference, not just financially, but in terms of you being able to sell a player on a project, because I think we forget that sometimes, is that when you talk to a player, certainly how much they're earning a week is an important aspect of things. It's also about what the vision is for the football club, and often where some players maybe are accused of money grabbing, it's actually they're not convinced on the vision that's being sold to them, whether that's achieving it or actually where the club want to go in relation to their own ambitions for their career.
Okay. First of all, I wanted to thank you again for coming on tonight on such short notice.
Absolute pleasure.
Thanks a lot. And I'd like to ask you one more question before I give you over to Rob. And it's a question about the sad fall of Aston Villa. They have many concerns at the moment. Chief among them is a relegation battle and what appears to be a fan revolt. What role does the ownership of Randy Lerner play in all of this?
I think that's a very good question. I was talking to a friend of mine about this quite recently, and if you look at the first three clubs that decided to dispense with their manager or eventually did, they were owned by Americans. And this is not a slant on Americans, period, because I think actually they have a strong passion and understanding for the game. I think American owners have a difficulty with it in the sense that if you compare it to, let's say, the NFL, the scope for failure is significantly more in the Premier League. And that's for a number of reasons. The most pressing are, you can essentially buy a player from Argentina or Zimbabwe. There are so many different markets and there are so many almost different percentiles of quality in a player that actually the scope for failure is much bigger. If you're drafting the NFL or you're trying to build a team in the NFL, you've only really got one market to work in, which is the American market. And you will be able to find people that can give you information, and because it's single entity, it's relatively closed off as a sport. I also think that they don't understand how the financial metrics work, in the sense that one example I use relates to Ellis Short, is that in the same summer Sunderland signed Craig Gardner for £6 million. Newcastle bought Johan Cabaye for 4.5. Now I think we can agree Johan Cabaye is arguably twice the player that Craig Gardner is, and at the time he had literally just won the League One title with Lille. So you were buying a French league title winner for £5 million, and your direct rival was paying $1 million more for a domestic player that had just been relegated with Birmingham. So that ability to not be cheated, but be sold a duffer, if you will, I think it catches a lot of American owners out, and I think they struggle with it. And consequently, I think Lerner is one of them, because he tried to switch the club from a relatively high spending model under Martin O'Neill, where they bought the likes of Ashley Young, Curtis Davis for upwards of 10 million, James Milner again, to a little bit more of a parsimonious, shrewd model. That's a good idea to have. You need the infrastructure to support that, though. You need scouts that are able to spot that talent at a very early age and bring it in at the right time. I think if you look at a lot of the business they conducted in the summer, it spoke of a team trying to be too clever. They bought Adama Traore, who They then agreed to give £75,000 a week if he played a certain number of games. That again, it's bad negotiation. They really hampered themselves by losing their spine as well. They lost Delph. They also lost Christian Benteke. To try and replace that with players that weren't familiar with the Premier League to begin with, and then that you were essentially paying, I think, a little bit over the odds for a number of them, it just was a recipe for disaster. And unfortunately, for Villa fans, we're seeing that play out pretty much every week in the Premier League.
I think you're being a little too kind to Randy Lerner. I think it's no secret that the team's been for sale for a couple of years, and I think maybe some of these moves that he made were in hindsight of, or in sight of selling the team. But I guess my question now is it easier to sell the team if they're relegated or as a Premier League team?
Well, that depends how strong you are on achieving your asking price, really. From what I can read and ascertain, he's very firm on his price. Aston Villa is a club with history in the context of the foundations of the game, even more recently with the European Cup. And if I draw comparisons to the team in the 80s that went down, I would say that team probably had more young players involved, and actually it was a lack of experience of a different kind that really hampered them. It was also quite a good thing for them because it allowed them to rebuild and restructure. If he's willing to take a loss, then I think it will be significantly easier to sell, because at the minute, if we assume, I think we can agree, they're going to be relegated. I think that's a comfortable assertion to make.
Yeah, I agree.
They become essentially a fixer-upper, to borrow a real estate term. A fixer-upper with a lot of potential and a high ceiling, assuming you buy them at a low price. So, as I said there before, if he's willing to take that loss, then it's significantly easier to sell. Realistically, it's as easy to sell as he is easy to be willing to sell. That's what it will come down to, is how firm he is on the price that he's set out for himself.
Okay, fair enough, and thanks a lot again for coming on, Kristan. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and take care.
And you, Mitt.
Thanks.
Hi, Kristan. It's nice to have you back on the show again, and Happy New Year to you as well.
Thank you, mate. How's things?
I'm doing well. Everything's well, that's for sure. My first question to you is, this is coming from our chat by Luca, and he's asking, do you think Ruben Loftus-Cheek is the greatest English midfield prospect since Frank Lampard?
Wow, that's a bold quote. Ooh, that's a bold one. I think, I must confess, I'm a fan of Ruben Loftus-Cheek. I like a lot of what he brings. Unfortunately, there is a midfielder in London who I think is blessed with a little bit more potential, and that's Dele Alli. I think certainly Ruben Loftus-Cheek is in a different position in the sense that he's at a slightly bigger club with greater expectations, a much more competitive first team. So in many ways, Ali has been afforded opportunities. Right now, though, those opportunities are benefiting him because they're elevating his level much more consistently, whereas really Loftus-Cheek is having to take the scraps he can get and work with that. And I think if you look at someone who actually shares Stamford Bridge with him, Nathaniel Chalobah, who's now on loan at Napoli, he's almost had what I would predict a similar path to that of Loftus-Cheek, in the sense that he was incredibly highly rated, and he went to Watford and did well. He went to Middlesbrough and did okay, and then they tried to send him to Burnley last year, and it didn't really work. It's that difficulty of, if you can't build the momentum, if you can't build the consistency of first team minutes, it's exceptionally hard to raise your level if you're trying to do it through sub-appearances and cup ties and things like that. So for that reason, I'd be inclined to say, if I'm trying to project the England team in 4 years' time in Russia, or 2 years' time, excuse me, I'm putting Dele Alli in there, not Ruben Loftus-Cheek, based off how they're playing right now, because I just think that there's more potential in Ali, personally.
You're right, absolutely. And when you look at a player like Ruben Loftus-Cheek, who hasn't had as much opportunities at Chelsea, I believe having played only 7 games so far for the club and just scored over the weekend against Scunthorpe in the FA Cup, you have to look at someone like Dele Alli, who is playing more minutes and is having more opportunities under Mauricio Pochettino.
Exactly. I think that's one of the things, we see that Mauricio Pochettino is linked to Manchester United at the minute with Louis van Gaal's own situation looking quite uncertain. Part of that reason is because if you look at the clubs he's been at in England, he's given youth a chance. Even at Espanyol, he took Felipe Coutinho on loan and did a lot of good things for Coutinho, I would argue. So his ability to work with youth is further underlined by the form of Ali, who again has jumped up from what is League One to the Premier League and made it look seamless. Now, I was lucky enough to be in the presence of Carl Robinson, his coach at MK Dons, after a cup tie. And he said, I think he's got it all. I think he can play at the absolute top and be a truly great player. Now, again, some of that may have been Carl trying to egg him up because he knew he was intending to sell him at some point. I also remember that cup tie, and he did stand out because he didn't look like a teenager. And that might sound quite patronising. It's not meant to. What I mean by that is he carried himself with the composure and the experience of a player who played a lot more games than he actually has. And when you have that mentality within you naturally, the sky is very much the limit for a player like that. And I think consequently we'll see it come to fruition because I think he's got the right kind of head on his shoulders.
Absolutely, definitely. Sticking now to Bournemouth, we saw about a few days ago, Bournemouth recently got Roma winger Juan Manuel Iturbe from on loan, and with rumors of them getting as well as Stefan El Shaarawy, and as well as I believe they got a player from Norwich City, Lewis Grabman, the other day. Do you think we're looking at the possibility of Bournemouth staying up with the front three being Grabman, El Shaarawy, and Iturbe?
It sounds quite mad, doesn't it? Grabbing El Shaarawy, and there's one of them that sticks out there, and I don't mean to disrespect Lewis Grabban too much because, again, he has a strong affinity with Bournemouth, and I was quite surprised when they agreed to sell him. I'm also quite surprised they've chosen to purchase him back because they've paid essentially double what Norwich gave them, and everything that I've seen from the Norwich end of things, talking to journalists I know down there, they're not terribly disappointed that he's leaving Carrow Road, because he hasn't been that good. And again, I know he tried to essentially force the move in the summer, wasn't happy that it didn't go through. This could be a moment where I'm made to look incredibly stupid. This could be my Titanic won't sink moment. I just don't think he's cut out for the Premier League. And there's a little bit of the duality between the moves that Bournemouth have made in the sense that I look at someone like Iturbe, who, again, if they stay up, they have to buy him. They've bought Benik Afobe, they've bought Grabban. I think this is a club that isn't too sure if it's going to stay up. And if you look at the moves, like I say, Iturbe is dependent solely on whether they stay up. So if they stay up and let's say he does well, they've got themselves a very good player. If he doesn't, they're kind of lumbered with a player who, again, has been dependent on them staying up. Grabban and Afobe, if they go down, won't leave. They'll stay because, again, they're championship strikers at present. Afobe did well for Wolves. Grabban did well for Bournemouth when they were in there. And I think he did okay from what I can remember with Norwich last season. So it's that idea of a little bit of planning for next season, just in case. It's a contingency plan of sorts. And again, it was desperately unfortunate for them to lose Callum Wilson because I think he has a high ceiling. I'm not too sure if that Grabban El Shaarawy Iturbe triumvirate, assuming that El Shaarawy follows suit, is going to happen. Personally, I think El Shaarawy stays in Italy. I think he comes back and he goes to Genoa or somewhere like that, just somewhere where he feels comfortable. I don't think at this stage in his career, having had a tough time at Monaco, he's going to want to take another risk, which unfortunately for him is very much what the Premier League move would be.
Yeah, of course. It's going to be interesting to see what those players could do at Bournemouth. And I'm just sticking to it, Turbo. Do you think that this move, should he have the good 6 months at the club, spark interest from Tata Martino to be on the national team for Argentina?
Personally, I think that would be a heck of a stretch. He'd have to do some pretty amazing things. Again, he fell into a trap that really he didn't set foot into. He was very much pushed into the comparisons to Messi, which, again, I feel incredibly sorry for any talented Argentinian attacker that comes through these days, because if it's not Maradona, it's Messi you're compared to, and you have to be allowed to develop your own identity. And for Iturbe, again, there's been flashes. Verona, again, I do wonder if he can do enough at Bournemouth and almost operate in the same way he did for Verona, with a smaller club, a smaller mentality, less of a constraint on him, more space to swim around in and be the big fish that I think he believes he is, then he could certainly achieve things. If that's enough to put him back in the national team frame, I'd be very surprised. I feel like it would have to be, he'd have to be essentially breaking double figures for goals and or assists in the 6 months that he's there, I think, for Argentina to give him a serious look for anything competitive.
It's either that or Paraguay, because you got to remember, he's also Argentine-Paraguayan, if you don't know about that.
Yeah, he's got the dual nationality, and I believe Lucas Barrios is another one that went the other way for that, didn't he? He was Argentinian, he went to Paraguay. Again, international football is a curious beast because a lot of people think every player is defined by their heart. The truth is they're not. Some are simply defined by opportunity. Definitely. If he thinks he can get with Paraguay, I'm sure he'll entertain that idea, and I'm certainly not going to cast aspersions on whether he thinks with his head or his heart. For him, it's about consistency again, though. It's that difficulty of he just needs to find somewhere where he thrives. And when the deal was confirmed not long after to Christmas, I said I felt it could be a good deal for him because, again, the Premier League is far more open. There's far less defensive structure. Tactically, it's a little bit more simple, for want of a better word. And I think those are the kind of parameters within which you'd see a fast winger like Iturbe really thriving, assuming he can deal with the physicality of things.
Definitely. Sticking now to my side of the pond, and I want to talk about Jordan Morris. Do you feel that the move to Werder Bremen is good for him, being someone of 21 years old and have not made a debut for in senior football yet?
Well, I think you raise a good point in the question yourself. He's going potentially to join a club, if Werder Bremen are interested, where he hasn't played much senior football. He will arguably be lacking in the nuances of that, in the understandings of that, and it could mean he's short on time. The good thing for him is, and I've talked to him about this, that Germany is a little bit like England in the sense that speed, physicality are two very prevalent factors in the way the games line up. And I think that could benefit someone like him because he is quick. He is a player that likes to run in behind, likes to play off the shoulders of defenders. I know from talking to his coach, he's working on coming shorter a little bit and then maybe being a bit more of a diverse striker in the way that he can collect the ball and pick it up. I think, Jurgen has been very forthright in saying that he wants his players in Europe. He described him as a good resource when I asked him about potential European opportunities. I think if he goes there, he runs a risk, certainly, of not playing. I think also, though, if you want elite players, you have to have players that essentially believe in their own ability and back themselves. And by going to Werder Bremen, he's essentially saying, I believe I can cut it at this level right away. I don't think I need 2 years, 18 months, whatever period of time you want to apply to it in MLS to be ready for the Bundesliga. I think I'm there now.
Definitely, and confidence is really key to any player who wants to try it over there in Europe. That's for sure. And just my last question, thank you again for taking so much time. I just want your opinions on whether or not Pep Guardiola, who is most likely heading to City following next season, would influence a lot of players to come to the club in Manchester, and also if he can create a team that are capable to win the Champions League.
I think he could create the team to win the Champions League. I think certainly he has the potential to do that because he's done it before. And I think once you've got that experience, you know a lot of the parameters that need to be in there, a lot of the nuances. I guess it's a bit like going to Disney World. You know which rides have the longest lines. In terms of bringing players to the football club that he ends up at, be it City, be it United, whichever, I'd be surprised if a former club like that would be interested in doing business with him. Because for me, it's not something that you see regularly. In fact, you often find that coaches who go back to former employers not long after leaving tend to get stung. I remember Brendan Rodgers with Joe Allen. That's probably the best example I can think of. 15 million for a midfielder that realistically was likely worth close to half that, if we're being brutally honest, and still has yet to deliver on the fee that they paid. And like I say, I think you're more likely to see him actually go for new players and try new things, and also work with the group that he's got, because I think that's one of the benefits of him is that he can work with the players that are already there and ingrain them on his methods.
Yeah, definitely. And like anyone would know, whatever club he goes to, I'm sure they're going to find a lot of success when you have Pep Guardiola as your manager. Kristan, I really want to thank you for coming on, and I'm going to pass it over to Joe.
Thanks, Rob. I do have one more question for you, Chris, before we let you go tonight. And I've been trying to keep my eye on Twitter to see the news break or when it does. A lot has been made about the potential sacking of Rudy Garcia at Roma. I don't even know if sometimes it looks like it's actually happened. Sometimes it hasn't happened. And I'm assuming it has not happened as of yet. But it looks like that Rudy won't make it to the weekend, it sounds like. So the talk is that they're going to be replacing him at the moment with Luciano Spalletti, who most recently coached in Russia, I believe, at not at Russia, at Zenit St. Petersburg. So is Spalletti the right choice to replace Rudy Garcia? Is it the best thing for Roma to replace Rudy Garcia at this point?
Well, Italian football is quite a curious one in the sense that everybody goes back to former clubs at some point, it seems like. There's a very bizarre, if you look at kind of a lot of Italian coaches' kind of Wikipedias or resumes, there's lots of this kind of disappears, comes back, is put on gardening leave, is taken off gardening leave, all this kind of stuff. What I would say is that Spalletti, he was relatively successful with Roma. He got them 2 Coppa Italias, he got them a Super Coppa. He also had some good success in Russia. He got them 2 Russian Premier League titles. There's nothing to be too ashamed of in terms of his resume and what he's achieved. It's difficult for me to truly assess Garcia because I personally haven't seen a huge deal of Roma. I know they've been struggling, and it's been unfortunate for them. I know they've invested a lot in the likes of Antoine Rudiger, even a man we touched on there before, Juan Iturbe. I think they could definitely have been better in the market. That's what I would say. I'm not sure if they've had enough value from the players that they've bought. Again, you look at the fact that they brought in Ibarbo, who was subsequently let go, the Dumbia move, Iago Falque to a lesser extent. There hasn't been enough success for the players that they brought in, even someone that seemed a complete no-brainer, like Mohamed Salah. The difficulty is Roma again. We talked about Newcastle being a difficult club to play for. I think Roma is a difficult club to play for personally. The fans in Rome, be it with Lazio or with Roma, they're quite demanding and they have no problem voicing their opinions, which again comes with benefits because I imagine it lets you know when you can go out for dinner and maybe when you can't. It also means it can put an intense mental strain on the players that are trying to turn things around. And I actually had a debate with someone this weekend about this, that when a team is struggling, you shouldn't really boo the players because that doesn't actually rectify the situation. And Xabi Alonso touched on this in an interview, and he said that when you are struggling, there's nothing more you need than cheers, because it's then when you really need the support. It's when the toughest hour is when you need that backing from the fans. We say all that though, they are 5th in Serie A, so it's not an atrocious position they're in. I think again, it's that demand of the fans, it's that pressure of playing for Roma that is proving difficult for them. If you've got someone like Spalletti, though, it's likely to build a bridge. And I think, again, it's Totti's last season this year. So if you want to bring the band back together, now is probably a good time to do it because, like I say, they're not on the best of form. I think they've only got 1 win in the last 5.
Do you see Totti as a possible coach coming in sometime in the next couple seasons, a la Zinedine Zidane or a la Pep Guardiola?
Well, it's certainly the popular choice at the minute is to bring back that former star and get him in because in theory he understands the club better than most because he's been on both sides of the white line. Mm-hmm. I think he could personally. I haven't seen him publicly in an interview say that he doesn't want to. You would think he has the right mentality for it. A lot of it is to do with mentality. We'll see how Zidane fares in the coming months. I think Zidane ultimately will struggle personally, but that's more of an indication of Real Madrid, the football club, rather than Zidane, the manager. And long term, certainly Totti could do it, but I would like to see him serve some kind of apprenticeship first, because I think if you throw someone into that almost blind, you're going to end up with a lot of mistakes made.
Right, exactly.
Joe, can I just add, in terms of Roma and their under fire manager, I think we're talking about American ownership again, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
So I'm gonna actually close, and one more question came to mind, Chris. So I'm gonna give you one more, and part of it is because we have Debbie Santos in our chat room, who is a staunch Real Madrid supporter. This is something that we brought up last week on the show, and the boys and I have talked about, at length. With Zinedine Zidane taking the helm at Real Madrid, a lot of people have really been disappointed in not so much Rafa Benitez or Zinedine Zidane or anything like that, but really Florentino Perez. If Zidane is not successful in this spell as manager, do you think that people in Real Madrid will finally be able to force Florentino Perez out of his position as president of Real Madrid?
It will be difficult for him to stay. I personally believe, and we had this debate on the Football Republic a few weeks ago, I personally think Florentino is someone that should never really leave the boardroom, in the sense that when he arrived at that football club for the first time, commercially they weren't the greatest, and financially they certainly weren't the greatest. He did a lot of work on that side of things to make them more ubiquitous in world football, I think, and the soccer power, and more financially sound, and a lot more revenue streams generated through him. The difficulty comes when he starts imparting himself on the football matters and the sporting matters. I don't think he's well placed to do it, personally. I think he has a pretty atrocious track record. I think he dispenses with managers in a bizarre kind of fashion, and some of the managers he even signs don't make sense. Rafa Benitez being a prime example. I don't think that group of players was ever going to respect someone like Rafa Benitez, and it was played out in the fact that I remember AS reporting that the players used to call Benitez number 10 because he would talk to them like he was this great player himself when he wasn't. Mm-hmm. That to me points to a group that maybe aren't the nicest and aren't the most professional. They're not like, let's say, Barcelona, where actually I think someone like Benitez could work, because I think the players would respect him and would respect his methods. Whether he'd succeed is a digression for a different time. I just think he's detrimental to the football club on the field. Mm-hmm. As long as he keeps interfering with these matches, as long as he keeps trying to sign the best player in the world every year, they're going to continue to have these struggles, because they're never able to build the continuity that Barcelona have. Barcelona make very few changes when you look at it. There's actually little adjustments, small adjustments, if you will, like running a motor car. Real Madrid, they scrap the engine pretty much every year. And you're never going to achieve success by doing that. And again, a lot of that is down to Perez, at least in my opinion. And if it does tank with Zidane, essentially they've played an ace card and someone that was held as a potential future long-term manager. They'll have trashed him incredibly quickly, and at that point I think Perez has to leave.
Yeah, and I just think that the amount of pressure that's going to be on Zidane's shoulders, because they're looking at him as if he's the next coming of Pep Guardiola, and how many Pep Guardiolas are there in the world? I mean, not saying that Zidane couldn't be one, but my God, those are big shoes to fill.
They're massive shoes to fill, and I think he has to be allowed to develop in his own time. His time with Castilla, I mean, he had 6 months longer than Guardiola, so you could say he's got more experience at the same period of his career. It wasn't great with Castilla, though. There were certainly issues. He signed a Swedish player from AIK Stockholm for a Castilla record fee and then released him a year later. They tanked last season when they tried to make it to promotion. His relationship with Odegaard was relatively strained, caused ructions within the camp because it was seen as slight favouritism towards him. So there's things he's going to have to work with. He also brings an understanding that I think few men have, having played for that football club and lifted trophies with that football club. He just needs time, though, and unfortunately time is one of the very few resources that it seems like Real Madrid have.
Okay. I am going to give you one more question. This just came in our chat room. It's coming from Luca again. Why do you think there was such a player power uproar with Mourinho at Chelsea and the sacking, but not with the Benitez sacking?
I mean, I disagree with the question, in truth. I think there was a play. It was just a lot more subtle at Real Madrid. If you look at the Clásico, there was instances where Real Madrid's front four were essentially pressed against the back four of Barcelona. There was very little communication. There was very little teamwork and cohesion. You contrast that with Barcelona, it was omnipresent, the cohesion between that group and the willingness to not always need to be the player that finishes the attack. just to be happy to be part of it in its construction. With Chelsea, the reason I think it stopped is the same reason it stops with Mourinho every time in the third year, is because they stop believing that it's us against the world mentality. He's consistently been able to build this wall around him and his squad that keeps out everyone else, and he's very kind of fueled on this guerrilla tactic of everybody hates us, nobody likes us, but I can get you a medal or I can get you a trophy. That's great for ambitious players that want to win things. There comes a point, though, where it grates. And for Mourinho in particular, what he was saying in the press about wanting a long-term legacy wasn't being reflected in his actions. And it came forward in a number of different ways. The Eva Canero debacle, instances like that, where essentially he was far too stubborn for his own good. And he kept using everything that went wrong as an opportunity to try and further entrench the camp in the idea that they're against us, when actually I think the players started to look at him and think, no, you're the problem. It's that idea of, when you have kind of a bratty child, or maybe if you're going through an awkward phase yourself and your parents say, you know what, everyone doesn't really get on with you. Maybe it's not everyone else's problem. Maybe you're the problem. It's a similar thing with Mourinho. It got to the point where they just stopped believing that people were out to get him, and actually he was causing a lot of the problems. And I think for Benitez, like I say, while it perhaps wasn't as vocal or it didn't permeate into the press with reports that there was a coup against him, I think it showed in the field, personally. I think it showed in the way they played and the way they approached the big games. They just weren't there for him.
I agree. Chris, thank you for giving us so much time again tonight. I know it's late for you where you are. And we always welcome you on the show and glad to have you, and always have you back soon.
Appreciate it, guys. It was lovely to talk to you. Hopefully see you again soon.
Great. Cheers, mate.
Thanks, Kristan.
All right. And that was Chris Heneage, again from the BBC, amongst other outlets. And he's always a fantastic guest. So anytime he gives us a buzz and says, hey, got a few minutes? We're going to make space. So, no doubt. But great stuff. Great stuff from him. Gentlemen, what I'd like to do is I'd like to run right into our Andres Cordero interview. And then if you guys don't mind, and if our listeners don't mind, what I'd like to do is lump our league coverage in with our match of the week coverage, or the week ahead. So basically, what we'll do is we'll go to each league. We'll cover the match that we predicted last week, the match we're going to preview for next week. We'll find out what I got wrong, and then we'll close it out if you gentlemen don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let me call up that interview right now. So without further ado, the Andres Cordero interview.
Joining us now on Low Limit Football is Andres Cordero from beIN Sports. Andre, this is Roberto Rojas. How are you tonight?
Good, Robert. Thanks again for the invite. My second time on, right? So should get some kind of temporary friend of the show status or something along those lines.
It's actually your third time, Andres. You came, it was. You came on, I believe, exactly last year, and then you came on maybe a few weeks after the Copa America, in which you went to Chile for. Is that correct?
Right on.
Yes, absolutely.
Two more times, and I'll match Messi.
And speaking of Ballon d'Or, that's actually my first question. With Neymar finishing third behind Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo today in Zurich, and as we've seen in the last 9 years in which we've seen the Argentine and the Portuguese on the podium, we see that Neymar is clearly possibly even the heir apparent to replacing Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo as the best player in the world. With him turning 24 next month, is it possible that, one, is this the right man to be the next best player in the world? And two, is this the last time we see both Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo on a podium for the Ballon d'Or?
Two excellent questions. I guess I'll deal with the first one first. Regarding Neymar, I think he's looked a bit like the heir apparent for a long time. I think when he won the Copa Libertadores with Santos, leading that team at such a young age, obviously with a very good team around him as well, we started to see some signs that Neymar long-term looked like a future Ballon d'Or winner. We thought, of course, he's got some maturing to do, some growing up to do in terms of some of the team aspects. And I think we saw some of the evolution when he joined Barcelona. At first, he was a bit of a ball stopper, didn't quite mesh immediately with the fluidity of Barcelona's play, adjusted brilliantly. I think he's grown tremendously in terms of growing his own personal brand as more of a team player, but also in terms of his football being more collective than individual. And when you saw how good he was at the end of last season and scoring in big games and Champions League deciding games, lifting Barcelona when maybe Messi wasn't necessarily at his best, or at the beginning of this season when Messi was absent through injury. I think he already looks like a player that can win the Ballon d'Or, if not for the extraterrestrials in front of him. So I think it's perfectly reasonable to say that not just he is the heir apparent, but it confirms our suspicions from very early on in his career that this kid is special and will, both in the team aspects and individual aspects, win a lot of trophies and awards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And this man is definitely, we've already shown at his young age that he's showing the qualities of being one of the best players in the world. Yeah, that's for sure. And I'm sticking to sticking to my next question, and I want to mention about Juventus. Much has been made about the quality of both Paul Pogba and Paulo Dybala in recent weeks. There's a stat that I read a few days ago that either Dybala and Pogba have had a direct role in 15 of 16 of the matches that Juventus has scored a goal in, and both have combined a total of 13 goals and 8 assists, directly contributing to 21 and 33 goals in Serie A. Having watched both them play in Serie A, covering them for BN Sport, and of course at Juventus, in your opinion, are both capable of being future Ballon d'Or winners?
Yeah, I think maybe it's a little bit early to say with Dybala because we're just now starting to see him break out at a big club. Obviously, he was fantastic at Palermo, combining brilliantly with Franco Vasquez last year. Vasquez continues to play well. Interestingly, Guillermo Barros Schelotto was just named manager of Palermo. That's a note. In any case, Dybala looks to me right now, honestly, like the best player in Serie A, and I think people will gasp a little bit when they hear that because he doesn't yet have the big name. He is a young player, obviously. Pogba as well. Pogba's got a lot more recognition, a lot more fame, and playing for Juventus, coming out of Manchester United. I think people are a little bit more expectant of Pogba being the next big thing as far as Serie A or Italian players are concerned. But I look at the way that Dybala plays. He doesn't have the most goals. He doesn't have the most assists. But he has the biggest impact on the game, and he does have enough of the numbers, enough goals, enough assists as well to be in consideration. I think when you're talking about can they be future Ballon d'Or winners? You say, yeah, sure they can be, but it's so far away from, the level of Pogba and Dybala now is so far away from the level of, say, Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo that it's almost a bit too much of to take it for granted, and it's no small feat. I'm personally not a huge fan of the award. It's kind of funny to me that you have me on today because I am a little bit cynical about these individual honors, and to me it is kind of poetic to see Messi win it, who does, even if it's just a perception thing, does seem to embody more of the collective game, more of the associative aspects of soccer than maybe Cristiano Ronaldo or Neymar do when they are just a tad more individualistic. And so I don't want to project Dybala or Pogba so far forward. I think both still have a lot to improve on their game. They're both terrific players, and we get to enjoy them on BN Sports. They're a big part of the reason why Juve have gone on this 9-game win streak and why they're now second in Serie A. And once again, challenging, looking like a contender to win potentially a 5th consecutive Scudetto. But the Ballon d'Or, I think, is a little bit down the line for both players. True, absolutely. And in the end, as we've seen in the last 8 years, it's always been gone to either the Argentine or the Portuguese as the best player in the world. But I think it's all popularity as well in the end. Sticking back to Serie A, I want to mention about Mauro Icardi. He currently has 8 goals and is the leading top goal scorer for Internazionale. Do you think that this is probably going to spur interest into Tata Martino for the Argentine national team, in which we see him in possible upcoming World Cup qualifiers or even the Copa America? Yeah, it'd be interesting to see both Icardi and Dybala get some time with the Albiceleste. I think Icardi, he's an interesting case, Icardi, right? Because he's such a terrific finisher. Mm-hmm. And he manages to put the numbers up despite not being all that involved in Inter's play. I thought this last game was maybe the best I've seen him all season in terms of participating in play, coming back, dropping in the midfield to get a touch in. Because for most of the season, he just seemed to be sort of hovering around the 18-yard box, hoping for service to arrive on an Inter side that don't really have a lot of creative midfielders. When you look at guys like Kondogbia, maybe Freddy Guarin is the most creative of those central midfielders they have, and he doesn't play every game because he's a bit inconsistent. So I thought it was weird to me that he was so reluctant to drop back a little bit more, to make more runs. And it was seemed to just sort of wait around for something to arrive for him. And yet, with very few touches, with very few shots on target, he still manages to put up numbers. And I think that speaks to what a clinical finisher he is. He obviously shared the Capo Cannonieri Award last season with Luca Toni, and so I think in the right system. Maybe with Argentina, if you have that wealth of creative talent in the middle and in the wide areas, and you do have a guy, Icardi, who can be maybe even a plan B behind Gonzalo Higuain if people are tired. I don't think Martino has, but if people are tired of Higuain, Icardi looks like a good option as well to receive service from the guys like Lavezzi, from Messi, from Di Maria, from Pastore, people who can create plays, because Icardi doesn't tend to create them for himself.
When it comes to Argentina, but it's going to be interesting to see what this next generation is capable of. Sticking now to coaches, the first question I want to mention is about Jorge Sampaoli, who recently just finished second behind Luis Enrique, and with Pep Guardiola as Coach of the Year just a few minutes ago in Zurich. A lot has been said about him possibly resigning as Chilean coach of the national team, and I just want to know your opinions over that situation happening now, and if he does leave, what team would be best suited for him?
Well, as you mentioned at the top of this chat, I was in Chile this past summer for the Copa America and got the chance to see Chile firsthand very often, and it really was incredible to me what the influence that Sampaoli had on this team. And obviously it was a continuation of a project that started 2 managers ago, really, with Bielsa. Mm-hmm. And I think he brought that intensity to Chile that they needed at home. And we saw, sometimes intense to a fault, right? When we saw some of the situations with Gonzalo Jara and how Chile seemed to grow a little bit more unlikable as the tournament went on. But because it was sort of desperation for them, there was the feeling that if not now, when? Such a great footballing nation with so many excellent players playing at the highest level, and they'd never won a major international title in their history. And so I think Sampaoli in many ways was the perfect guy to give them just the right tweak of their attitude, right? Bielsa instilled in them a certain mentality that they could play at big clubs, that they should have more ambition, that they could be more better professionals. I think maybe Sampaoli was sort of the drive that they needed. It does appear that Sampaoli no longer wants to be there, that he doesn't have a whole lot more to accomplish. I don't know that too many are picking Chile as a real candidate to win the World Cup in 2018, although it's not entirely out of the question. We saw how well they can play at times. And so I think maybe there's a sense with Sampaoli that his job is done, that it's time for him to move on. We know that for some time he's wanted to manage in Europe. There's been some talk of late that Roma might be interesting with Rudy Garcia. Apparently on his way out, it does look as though Spalletti's the man who's going to take over there. He's actually played down those links. Sampaoli says that he's had no contact with Roma. I would not be surprised to see him managing in Europe relatively soon. I think somewhere like Spain or especially Italy would be his best bet.
Now, going forward, do you see someone like a Manuel Pellegrini, who is rumored to leave after Pep Guardiola is rumored to replace him at Manchester City, or maybe a Marcelo Bielsa return back to Chile?
Yeah, well, Bielsa obviously is available now, and Pellegrini will more than likely be available at the end of the season, with so many rumors about Guardiola headed to England and possibly Manchester City, though he claims that he's not yet chosen a team. He told BN Sports actually just today. That he's no closer to identifying which team he will be managing. With Pellegrini, he didn't have a great relationship with the Chilean FA. It's the reason why he hasn't managed the national team. Obviously, there's been changes there of late, and you wonder if that could maybe influence his decision, if there's a clean slate, if he's given more power. But the Chilean media and the Chilean FA weren't particularly great to Pellegrini on his way out, and it's weird because he is obviously their most accomplished manager on the world stage, having managed in La Liga, in the Premier League, having won obviously with Real Madrid, he got 96 points, a record. Then for the club before Mourinho reached 100, goes on to win the Premier League with Manchester City. So he would seem to be the ideal candidate. And the question is, can they sort out some of that history and make him happy and make him want to return? I'm not sure. I don't know him personally. We haven't had a chance to talk about this, but I'm not sure if they can sort of bury the hatchet, if you will, and maybe move forward. He would obviously make a ton of sense, and I think they'd be better for him. And I talked about them, being good enough to challenge at Russia 2018. I think they're infinitely better if Pellegrini's their manager.
Definitely, and he's a sensational manager, as we've seen in his spells in Spain and, of course, for Manchester City over the last 3 years. Sticking back to managers, I want to talk about Rafa Benitez. He recently just got sacked, I believe, exactly a week ago, and he was unpopular with the Real Madrid fans, despite only losing, I believe, 3 games, and one of those 3 was the 4-0 victory. The 4-0 loss against Barcelona at the Santiago Bernabeu. Now, a lot of people have been said that side that Real Madrid put against Barcelona wasn't exactly a Rafa Benitez side. It was more offensive, and it looked like Florentino Perez probably had a say in that. I just want your overall opinions on how he handled his short spell at Real Madrid, and what do you think about Zinedine Zidane and his expectations for the club for the rest of the season?
Yeah, well, Rafa Benitez was put in a very difficult situation from the get-go, just as I think Zinedine Zidane is in a tough spot. Now, Zidane is in a tough spot long-term. I think Benitez was put in a really difficult situation from the get-go, and that is because they fired a perfectly good manager in Carlo Ancelotti for absolutely no reason, seemingly. I always think back to that press conference that Madrid president Florentino Perez gave at the end of last season when he was asked by a journalist, what did Ancelotti do wrong? And Florentino Perez actually said, I don't know. And you could tell it was sort of the lack of a sporting project, the lack of any real idea for the long term. And I think that's been sort of the biggest problem and the biggest obstacle for any Real Madrid manager, the absence of a sporting director and the power that Florentino Perez wields over the supposed sporting project at the Santiago Bernabeu. That's going to be a real issue for a while now, because that was installed basically when Jose Mourinho came in and got so much power at Real Madrid. They did away with the sporting director gig that Valdano had. Florentino Perez, in the absence of Mourinho, has been calling the shots himself. Essentially, he collects not footballers or action figures. It doesn't matter if we've already got a great central midfield. We'll also go out and spend money on players we don't need. The case in point, Asier Yarramendi, who was then sold back to Real Sociedad and is now a permanent starter there as well. So I think that's going to be the challenge for any manager at Real Madrid, and it's not going to be any different for Zinedine Zidane. Now, with Zidane, in terms of the short term, it's not a terrible time to have made the change, because Madrid players didn't seem to buy into Rafa Benitez's plans. The Madrid press seemed to want him gone. The Madrid fans, or at least sections of the fans, were never convinced by Benitez and his style, which was not terribly exciting either at Napoli or at Real Madrid. And we see just how exciting Napoli are now under Mauricio Sarri. I mean, who would have thought that Sarri would last longer in his job than Benitez has?
Yeah.
So with Zidane, in terms of it being a decent time to take over, it's just because the schedule kind of lays down and sets up quite nicely for Real Madrid the next couple of games. I mean, that Deportivo match, which they won very comfortably 5-0, was the toughest of Zidane's first 5 games in charge. I mean, he's going to get Sporting Gijón next at the Bernabeu, Betis, Espanyol, Granada. It was pretty accessible results before facing Athletic, which will be maybe his first real big test. Athletic have been pretty good this year, and obviously Arita Duis is a danger against anyone. So it's a good moment in that he gets a chance to sort of play an attacking brand of football, won't really be challenged too much, gets to put his ideas in practice, and the team seems to have rallied around him. It looks to me a little bit like Carlo Ancelotti's Madrid, and that's no surprise considering Zidane was Ancelotti's assistant. And I think maybe that familiarity has helped the players as well. It's like, oh, we like this. We were happy with Carlo. I think we'll be happy with Zidane.
Now, if say they don't win a trophy like the Champions League or La Liga at the end of the season, do we still see him at the helm of Real Madrid?
That's a very good question. I think we will, to be perfectly honest. Because it's not, obviously they're out of the Copa, which would have been the one sort of safety net that they could have won, and it saved Jose Mourinho at one stage. The Copa del Rey, obviously, with the ineligibility of Cheryshev against Cadiz, getting Real Madrid knocked out of that competition, and so their chances to win a trophy are either La Liga, where they're currently third, or the Champions League, which is always incredibly difficult to win. Depends a lot on who you get drawn against in the late stages, and on how lucky you are in terms of injuries and whatnot. And Madrid have had some problems with injuries, so maybe it's a little bit too much to expect Zidane, a manager who's doesn't have a wealth of experience managing. Obviously, he was a fantastic player, elite, but in terms of management, I mean, he wasn't particularly great at Madrid Castilla, dealing with a lot of the issues, some of them off the pitch. In the third division, they seem to have picked things up a little bit this season, but nothing overwhelming. Nothing like, for example, Pep Guardiola, who he gets compared to sometimes. When Guardiola was with Barcelona B, getting them promoted into the Segunda, there was real success there. That hasn't been the case with Zidane, and so I think it's a lot to expect that in his first half a season, really, with Madrid, he's going to come away with some silverware. And from another standpoint, Florentino Perez, this is basically his last card to play, because if we look at how this all panned out, the Bernabeu fans, when they brought out the white hankies, they weren't just calling for Rafa Benitez's job. They were calling for Florentino Perez to resign as well. Perez managed to take some of the pressure off of himself by coming out to the media and backing that dreaded vote of confidence to Rafa Benitez. Took the pressure off of Florentino, put it on Benitez, and a bad result later, Benitez was fired. Now, I don't think Zidane is going to be the next fall guy. So if Zidane doesn't pan out this season with silverware, I think he'll be given at least the start of next year to put his project in motion.
Absolutely. It's going to be an interesting remainder of 2016 to see where he falls behind. And just my last question, and thank you again for giving me so much time. I want to talk about Sebastian Giovinco. I want to know your opinion basically about his role going forward with the Italian national team. And we've seen what he's been able to achieve at the in MLS and at Toronto FC, scoring 22 goals last season. Do you think we'll see him at Euro 16 next summer?
Yeah, I don't see why not, to be perfectly honest. And I thought it was great of Antonio Conte to call both him and Pirlo into the squad earlier this year. Obviously, Pirlo couldn't go because of injury, but Giovinco had absolutely dominated in Major League Soccer, and he was just a lock to win the MVP honor as well. And more so, not just because he shined in MLS, it's not a ridiculously high level when you consider, Serie A and the level that some of the other Italian internationals are playing at. But the fact that attack is a position of need for Italy. We're not looking at a great Italian front line at the moment. There's no Christian Vieri, coming through. There's no young Francesco Totti coming through at the moment for Italy. So I think with a guy like Giovinco, who was good enough to play in Serie A. He wasn't a regular starter, obviously, at Juve, but Conte really had faith in him. And I remember this one moment where Juventus fans were whistling Giovinco, and Conte just sort of put his arm around him and seemed to chastise the Juve fans. And so it's a player he believes in, and a player who right now has great confidence. So I do think that he'll have a part to play. Whether he's going to be a starter for the Azzurri, I don't know. But I think he's good enough to be included in the squad for Euro.
Definitely. He's an exceptional talent and a wonderful talent, and I believe Italy would do well with him on the side. Andres, I really want to thank you for coming on. Hope that we speak again soon.
Great. Thanks as always, man.
All right. Thank you, Andres. Yep. Thank you.
And that was the great Andres Cordero from Bein Sport. Rob, great interview with him. I did tweet at him that we're going to have to get him to the Messi level by having him on a few more times. I did like that. Great answer with him in terms of the Pogba Dybala question. They are both pretty young, and it's going to take a little bit of time to get them to that level. But I'm under the impression that they can both, especially after our two guests tonight, they can both get to that level of being that challenger for that Ballon d'Or year in and year out. Yep. So
yeah, definitely.
So that's at least that's how I saw it. So
Mike, thoughts?
Yeah, it was good. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. So, all right. So let's do this, gentlemen. So we're going to do the condensed closeout version because I know unfortunately because we got the late start, we're late into the evening here, and Luca and Liam, because they're across the pond, have to call it a night here eventually. So we're going to combine our league coverage with our preview of the week ahead. This way, we're going to kind of kill two birds with one stone on this one. So I'm going to go ahead and go first, I guess. And also I want to mention to Edmund in the chat that I enjoyed the talk about the Liga MX match from last night, which was the Chivas Veracruz match. Guys and folks, if you want to listen to some good radio after our show, Stereo Serie A starts up at about 8 o'clock, so they'll be coming on in a few minutes. And the boys will talk a lot of Serie A. They're a great listen. And then I believe at 10 o'clock, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, is the folks from the Mexican Soccer Show, including Tom Marshall, Rizzo Vasquez, among others, and they do a great job with the Mexican League. So if you are really looking to talk more about the Mexican League, definitely go listen to those guys. They're a fantastic listen, to say the least. So, over in France, last week we had our match of the week was the Angers-Caen match, as this was a match of top teams in the league. I had predicted in this one, I believe, a 1-1 draw. I did get this one wrong. This was Angers winning at home 2-0 over Caen with a goal from Capel in the 41st minute. And I'm going to butcher this one, gentlemen, if you're ready. Kethkiomafofone.
That's good enough.
There you go. In the 74th minute, scoring to seal the deal for Angers. We'll look at the statistics in this one real quick. The possession favored Angers 54-46. Shots were 16-12 in favor of Caen. Shots on goal were 4-3 in favor of Angers. So A decent match there, and the 2-0 victory for Angers keeps them at the top of Ligue 1, marching forward. Our match of the week, gentlemen, this week is going to be a Sunday tilt at 3 o'clock, and it is the Saint-Étienne versus Lyon match, currently as they sit in the standings, and I'm just going to get my tables up here quickly. The Lyon, obviously last year was, I believe, the second-place finisher in Ligue 1. Saint-Étienne sat just in the Europa positions. Currently, we see Lyon in 6th and Saint-Étienne in 7th. These two teams are only separated by 4 goals in the table. Lyon is a plus 3, and Saint-Étienne is a -1, but they both hold the same amount of points. So in this one, I'm going to take, since Saint-Étienne is at home, and they are always a tough out at home, I'm going to take Saint-Étienne to win this one 2-1. I think this is going to be certainly one of the best matches of the week coming up. There was also another match that could have qualified for match of the week this particular week. I believe it was the Caen-Marseille match, which is also a good one as well, but we're going to go with Saint-Étienne-Lyon. So, match of the week, Saint-Étienne-Lyon, Sunday 3 p.m. My prediction, 2-1 Saint-Étienne over Lyon. Rob, in La Liga, what's going on?
In La Liga, the match of the week that we've had was Celta Vigo against Atletico Madrid. The result was a 2-0 victory for Atletico Madrid. Goals came from Antoine Griezmann in the 49th minute, and a goal from Yannick Carrasco in the 80th minute. Our match of the week for La Liga will be Barcelona against Athletic Bilbao, Sunday at 2:30 p.m. It's second against 8th in La Liga with 14 points replacing them. I don't see anyone trying to stop this Barcelona side once again. I'm going to go for 3-1 Barcelona.
3-1 Barca, yeah, at the Nou Camp on Sunday at 2:30. So, I don't see Barca losing that one either. But that is probably the tastiest match on the board.
And it's a rematch of the Super Cup final in which Barcelona lost to Athletic Bilbao.
That's right.
If you remember.
Yes, I do. So, Mike, I'm going to send it over to you for our English coverage.
There was no match of the week last week, and this week's match of the week will be a midweek match Wednesday at 3 p.m. Liverpool versus Arsenal, and I'll put my prediction up sometime tomorrow.
Fantastic. And we'll make sure you watch our Twitter feed, Low Limit Football, for that. I was going to say, that's a pretty easy week to cover, don't you think, Mike?
Yeah, it was a boring week. I don't like when there's no Premier League games.
No, I know it. But they're going to get back to work this week, so that's perfectly fine, I would say. Let me get, I've lost my match of the week from the past week here in Italy. If you just bear with me 1 second, I seem to have misplaced it. It was the Roma-Milan match from this weekend. I had predicted a Milan victory in this one, 2-1. Finished in a 1-1 draw. Rudiger with a goal in the 4th minute. In the second half, Kuchka in the 50th minute scoring as well. We did have a Kevin Prince Boateng sighting in this one as well. And this is kind of the death knell. This was played at the Olimpico, and this is, I think the result here is the reason why people are really looking at Rudy Garcia as probably being gone by the end of the week. So, information or statistics in this one, ball possession was 54-46 in favor of AC Milan. Shots on this one were 17-12 in favor of Milan, and shots on goal were 6-5 in favor of Milan. So, Milan's still trying to make their march up the table, and with Roma, as far as the silver lining goes, most of the other teams that were ahead of them lost. We saw Inter lose, we saw Fiorentina lose, so they didn't really lose much ground per se. But if they're not careful, you saw Juventus win again, you saw Napoli win again, and the way these teams are going right now, you could possibly see this 5 or 6 team race turn into a 2-team race between Napoli and Juventus, so we'll have to see what happens there. Match of the week coming up, gentlemen, for this week in Serie A is a Sunday 2:45 tilt, and we have AC Milan back in the thick of it again. This time they are going to be at the San Siro facing Fiorentina in this one. Fiorentina, like we had said, coming off of that 3-1 loss to Lazio earlier in the week, and Roma have only won 1 match in their last 5. Guys, I'm going to take, in this one, I know it's at the San Siro, but I think I'm going to take Fiorentina to win this one. I'm going to take a 2-1 victory for Fiorentina in this. We did actually have a Giuseppe Rossi sighting in this match against Lazio on the weekend, and he really added a nice little spark to the Fiorentina side. So I'm wondering if you could see Montella possibly getting him out there, running him out there a little bit more, maybe even starting him and seeing what he can do to affect the game. So we'll have to keep an eye on that from here. So that is the condensed version of our league coverage, ladies and gentlemen. We're a little pressed for time tonight, so that's why we kind of condensed it down. But hopefully next week we'll make it a little bit longer. So Mike, I am going to throw it back over to you for the trivia answer.
Besides Sol Campbell, name the 3 other players who have played for both Arsenal and Tottenham. And I guess I should have mentioned they had to have left one or the other to go to the other club.
Okay. Did Liam
Not
get it
to have
right?
gone somewhere else and then come there, because there's other players who have done that.
Okay, did Liam get it right?
Nobody got it.
Oh, wow.
I don't think Liam even heard it. So
I tried to type it in the chat for him, so
I didn't get a reply. The couple of people who did answer got 1 or 2 right, but not all 3.
Okay. I've got nothing. I am SOL on this one. I am Saul.
Seriously.
Yeah.
You gotta have one.
You
gotta have one.
Rob, go ahead with it.
Emmanuel Adebayor?
Yes.
Okay.
Wow, Joe.
I didn't know about it. Adebayor played for Arsenal. I honestly didn't know that. So.
Wow. Really?
Yeah, well, dude, I watched like 10 different leagues.
Don't you remember when he played for Man City and he scored against Arsenal and ran all the way to the way end and taunted them?
No. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
I missed that one. So, all right. Well, I missed that one.
All right, Rob, you got any others?
William Gallas?
Yeah, who also played for Chelsea.
Mm-hmm.
And one more.
Yeah, that's
a little harder. Not as well-known name, but still a name. Didn't live up to his potential.
Yeah, no. Sorry.
David Bentley.
David Bentley.
Right.
Yeah, don't know. Sorry, but at least I got 2.
Yep. And,
the 2
and it was all you this week. So.
Should have got.
Adebayor, Gallas, and Bentley. The answer to the trivia question, and Sol Campbell.
Right, who was probably the biggest one and the most hated by both fans after that.
That's right. So,
that's right.
Gentlemen, without further ado, I'd like to hit the closing music.
All right.
What's Freddie got to do with it?
So, for episode 104 of Low Limit Football, special thanks again to Chris Heneage and to Andres Cordero for joining us. Next week, it is currently tentative, but we will look like we'll be having Ariel Castillo from MLS Soccer and formerly from the Soccer Gods joining us. She's a trip on Twitter. She was a trip when she did Man Crush Mondays, so we're just finalizing some details, and hopefully we'll have her soon. So, for episode 104 of Low Limit Football, I'm Joe Usello.
And I'm Roberto Rojas.
And I'm Mike Orr.
Thanks for listening, and good night.
Thanks for listening, guys.